So in the hardware space lately, there's been a little bit of hardware elitism going on. You know, Reddit, Discord, I see online, even in my YouTube comments, I see people saying all the time, unless you have a 3090, you're poor, you're a peasant. Don't even try to buy a budget PC. Gaming's not for you. Just a lot of nonsense. So I thought, hey, okay, let me take this to Twitter. Let me confirm what's going on here. Do you think a $1,000 PC can give you a good gaming experience in 2021? For peasant gaming, yes. For competitive, it's a big no-no. If your standards are garbage, for sure. Many kids that are poor would happy with 1080p medium, 60 FPS, in the latest titles. Me personally, after using 360 Hz, a 1K rig is not enough. I don't even know what the hell this means. Just get a console if $1,000 is your poor person's budget. I've literally been telling all my friends to get a console. $2,000 budget or bust. If you're playing garbage games, sure. This guy is actually the only guy that had a good answer. A good experience is completely subjective to the buyer. So it seems like Twitter agrees with the masses. If you can't really afford a high-end PC, you're better off just buying a console. In this video, we're kind of gonna be going back to the roots of how young Jufus became a gamer. The goal of this channel was always about showing people how to get the most out of their hardware. It was never about budget or brand or, yeah, budget, or it was never about any of that stuff. It was just like, what do you got? How do you get the most out of it? It doesn't really matter what it is. And you may be saying to yourself, hey, Jufus, it's easy for you to talk because you have all this crazy hardware now. You can do whatever you want. You're a tech tuber with all these supporters. Young Jufus was a very poor Jufus, but he still loved gaming. Young Jufus used to overclock the piss out of his hardware to be able to compete. So today, we're gonna see what you can do with $1,000 in 2021. Wait, what is it? September 2021, right in the middle of the worst GPU shortage ever, pandemic, price increases. Literally the worst time to buy a PC is right now. We're gonna see what FPS you can get with $1,000. May I introduce to you what a $1,000 PC looks like. $1,000 including the graphics card. Let's go over the part selection first. Every part in this build was very specifically selected because even though the Intel CPUs are cheaper, you gotta buy a cooler, you gotta buy a more expensive motherboard, and you'll see what I mean coming up here, actually. Now, if you're in the market for a budget build and you want to build something similar to this, or you want to just copy paste this, links to all the parts in the description below if you want to support the channel. Now, at first glance, you may have seen that the PC is an AMD PC. Jufus, why'd you buy an AMD system? Well, how do I put this? AMD systems can go faster with less money invested as a platform. Intel systems might be faster for certain types of games, but you gotta buy a more expensive motherboard, more expensive CPU cooler, more expensive RAM. An AMD system, you can max this thing out with 3600 megahertz of RAM. Intel, you gotta buy 5000 megahertz RAM. And then you gotta find a motherboard that works with that RAM. I went so budget on this build that I used the paste that came on the stock cooler. I didn't even buy better paste. Now let's go over the part selection quickly. 5600X, no brainer, obviously. You're gonna want Zen 3, do not get Zen 2. Viper RAM, again, no brainer, the cheapest B-die RAM that you can buy. 6600 XT, now, yeah, this is gonna be the main portion of our entire budget here. These do come in stock at $400 quite often, so it's actually possible to buy these, is what I'm trying to get at here. So I mean, if you can find a 6700 XT or a 3060 Ti, great, that's good on you, but for the purposes of what I could actually buy that's within the budget, this is what I could get, right? Now, The caveat with this graphics card is it only uses 8 PCIe lanes. You have to get a B550 motherboard, or I guess X570, but those are too expensive. So this B550 ASRock HDV motherboard was the cheapest, shittiest B550 motherboard I could find on Amazon. And it actually works quite well with this CPU. The RAM only really goes up to 3600 speed, but that's all you need for Ryzen to max the system out. 1 terabyte NVMe. I'll just post the cheapest one that I could find in the link below. And a 650 watt EVGA. This PC literally pulls 250 watts while gaming, so you can go with an even cheaper power supply if you wanted to. But 650 watt is so cheap as it is, you might as well just, you know, future-proof yourself a little bit. Now, I did cheat a little bit because I'm just reusing an old case I had. In my opinion, you should never spend money on a case if you don't have to, or if you don't have the money, I should say. If you're this broke, I should say, then I don't mean offense by that, but if you're this budget constrained, just grab a milk carton, man. Who gives a shit about the case? It doesn't have to look pretty. Now, if you were to build this yourself, I really highly recommend that you just buy like a 240 mil AIO, just buy like a $15 Snowman cooler. The stock cooler is so bad on these AMD CPUs, but I just wanted to show you guys anyway that you could do it, you can do it, but man, or just buy some better paste. Holy crap. Now, the goal of the FPS benchmark numbers is it worth $1,000? Or can you just buy an Xbox for $500 and have 120 FPS, right? What is the better option to go if you are a enthusiast gamer? So with that all out of the way now, you know why we selected all these parts, how it's all gonna work together now. Let's go show you some numbers.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We got Overwatch up first with stock out of the box settings. We got way more than 300 FPS in this title. It doesn't even matter. You don't even have to tune this to play this game. We do have dips down to about 300 in really heavy fights. You can probably just see it right now. It pretty much maintains above 300 the entire time without even tuning the damn thing. So is this better than an Xbox for competitive esports such as Overwatch? I would say so.
Double kill. King Slayer. Triple kill. King of Carnage. Kaleidoscope.
Okay, the next one up is Splitgate. This was a pretty pointless game to download. It is 360 hertz locked even without a tune at all. So, I mean, I didn't actually realize that this game was so easy to run. It's like, I don't know. You're going to find that in most esport titles, it's not really so much about the graphics, it's about the gameplay, right? So, yeah, 360 hertz again. This game must be full of bots because I've literally only played 2 games just for these 2 benchmark runs, and I already have a 10 KD. Apex Legends is up next. This one's a little bit more rough on the hardware. Depending on where you're looking, you can have anywhere from 300 FPS all the way down to the mid 150s with a stock out of the box PC. So this one is definitely going to require a tune if you want to play competitively. Going from 300 FPS to 150 is just a horrible gaming experience in general. But I mean, still faster than an Xbox, even out of the box, right? Hostile dropping. Warzone is up next. There's a few things you got to actually pay attention to in this game. Look how hot the CPU gets in stock form, and look at how much it's actually downclocking. So you're going to see when we do the overclock numbers, we lost about 400 megahertz off the CPU clock because this is just using PBO, right? So this game is actually so CPU intensive that it'll make your CPU run out of the box at 75 Celsius almost, right? So that's exactly why you want to have a higher performing CPU cooler, I want to say, right? Now, the next thing that you're going to see is that the GPU actually isn't even clocking that high. So what that tells you is that in this scenario, we are CPU bound. So even though you have a 6600 XT, it's not even using the full 60, like the full power of the 6600 XT. The CPU is not fast enough out of the box. The RAM is too slow out of the box. But we already knew that about this game. This game requires insane tuning to be competitive at it. You have to tune the crap out of this thing in order to play properly. So don't buy the hardware expecting to play Warzone competitively out of the box. Next up is Horizon Zero Dawn. This is just a single player game that I've been playing on the side here. It's completely GPU bound in this scenario, even at stock setting. Look how high the GPU is boosting, right? So you're getting 90 FPS at 1080p highest settings. It's like not, it's fine. Like I don't see why anyone would not want to play this game at 1080p highest. It looks great. Look how great this game looks, even at 1080p, right? If you play on a PlayStation 5, you would get maybe 4K 60, I think, maybe, or some kind of weird upscaled 4K 60. I don't know, but in terms of this, there's no reason why you can't play single player games on this rig, even out of the box. All right, quickly here, Overwatch with overclocked settings, pretty much 400 FPS locked. It does dip down to about 360 when it gets really busy on the graphics. Keep in mind, this is 1080p max settings, so if you just turn this down to high or medium, you'll have 400 locked. But notice how hot the CPU is running as well, right? So there's not really any way to get around that. Maybe if I just use some better paste, but other than that, can you play this at 360 hertz locked with this hardware? With a $1,000 PC? You bet you can.
Victory.
Splitgate, same thing. 1080p highest settings, 360 hertz locked. So we're just going to move right along here because there's not really anything to see here. So in Apex Legends, I couldn't actually get it to lock at 300. It seemed impossible. I wasn't really sure if it was CPU bound or GPU bound. I'm going to go ahead and assume it was GPU bound just because we're running 1080p highest settings, right? But instead of it going down to 150 FPS dips, now it only goes down to 200 FPS dips. So we got a 50 FPS increase on the lows here. So it's really well worth it to tune it with some Vipers. Way more competitive than an Xbox or a PlayStation. Way more. Horizon Zero Dawn now, it's literally the exact same FPS as it was before. It's maybe 10 FPS higher. Because if you look back at the old one, it was boosting to 2600 megahertz on the GPU, and it wasn't hitting the power limit. So all I really did was increase the megahertz by 100 and overclock the memory a little bit. So the FPS in this game, you gotta hand it to AMD for those stock out of the box boost algorithms, man. 2600 megahertz out of the box, that thing was flying. All right, last but not least, Warzone. Now we're gonna see the biggest gain here on this game from the tune. Anywhere from a 40, 50, 60 FPS increase. But look at how hot the CPU is running now. So it probably would have been better if I went to like 4.55 or 4.525 gigahertz with a lower voltage, save all that heat. But I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you're going to buy a CPU cooler because this thing, I mean, this game just hits the CPU way too damn hard to be running on that shitty AMD aluminum cooler, right? But other than that, you can literally get more FPS in this game than most streamers with this $1,000 build. As long as you know what you're doing and you know how to tune it properly, there's no reason why you can't play competitively in Warzone with a $1,000 PC. it will completely blow away an Xbox and a PlayStation in this. Now, you also have to keep in mind that this is at 120 FOV, whereas the consoles are at 80 FOV. So you're getting, what, 50, 60 more FPS with another 50% of your visibility, being able to see from your sides more, right? So far, far more competitive than a console. I rest my case. PC gaming is always the way to go, even on a budget, even in 2021. Now, there's a few addendums I want to make to the build here. If you can afford it, get a better motherboard. This thing is atrocious to work with. It doesn't even have a VRM heatsink on it, and because it doesn't have a VRM heatsink on it and the VRMs are so weak, future upgradability is going to be an issue with this thing. So let's say Zen 3D comes out and you want to buy like a 5800 or 6800X. Let's say you want to buy the next one. You want to get an 8 core, 12 core, 16 core someday. You're not going to be able to do that with this motherboard. So if you can spring an extra $50, get a better motherboard for yourself. Secondly, get a CPU cooler. Just do it. Just don't. You saw the numbers yourself. It's at least buy better paste. As for the Vipers, they are a good way to go. Maybe get yourself a 4-DIMM motherboard instead of this 2-DIMM one. That way you can buy 2 Vipers now. Later down the line, when you want to upgrade your RAM, you just buy 2 more Vipers and throw them in. Perfect. So the only reason that this build was so constricting was because of that $1,000. But if you can stretch it to like $1,100, $1,200, you can get a little bit more future proofing out of your system. Anyway, guys, I hope this answers that question. Moral of the story, never feel discouraged that some streamer has a 3090 with like a 7020X Space Galaxy Edition CPU. Don't worry about it. You can compete. Hell, this build has more FPS than most streamers do anyway. Never think for a second that I don't know about budget and about low-end builds. That's where I came from. That is the source of this channel, is to help everyone have a chance to compete in esports, not just the rich, privileged people. Anyway, guys, if you like the content, hit that subscribe button, do all that YouTube SEO stuff, like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you want to see more type of stuff like this. As always, thank you so much to all the website supporters, Twitch subs, donations, consults, just everything. It makes it so I can do this. And I had a lot of fun doing this. So thank you so much to all you guys that are supporters, and I will see you in the next one. Talk to you later.